Again, I'll introduce it, the revised RAD proposal based on the feedback you just heard from one of our team members, or a social scientist. I'm just going to read it. To pause all clearing, infrastructure laying, and permanent construction work on the right of ways of Crown, Radial, and Outer Ring in order to enable the community to define a way forward for Auroville's development following collective processes, the Master Plan Perspective 2025 framework, and other relevant regulations. The outcome shall be approved through a ratified Residents' Assembly decision-making process before the above specified clearing, infrastructure laying, and permanent construction work resumes.
And so we'll be going into the details of this statement or proposal and explaining what changed, taking every chunk of the original proposal and seeing what has changed.
Right, so to start, the beginning of the previous statement was to stop all development work, and this has now been transformed to pause all clearing, infrastructure laying, and permanent construction work. And the reasoning and the way we've incorporated the feedback you just heard, since the first RA meeting, it has been specified that it is not a stop, as was previously stated, but a pause. To question what needs to happen during that pause, many replied that we should have further planning processes. And planning processes can be seen as development work, hence the need to specify what development work needs to be paused. We heard a lot about, we had a lot of requests about a DDP, and we'll go into further detail about how that'll be incorporated and what aspects of the master plan talk about this kind of detailed development plan and what else is needed. The next section that the next part of the proposal is the section which states on the Crown. And as you saw from the feedback, and as you can see again repeated here, is the chart that shows the number of people who actually asked for the Crown and other right-of-ways to be included. So that's the change from on the Crown to on the right-of-ways of Crown, Radials, and Outer Ring.
And if we look at this part, which was until further notice from the Residents' Assembly, actually it brings up two questions. So the first one is, what should happen during the pause for development to resume with community agreement? And so this has been changed to that we ask for a pause in order to enable the community to define a way forward for Auroville's development following collective processes, the Master Plan Perspective 2025 framework, and other relevant regulations. So the reason why this has been changed is because to the question what needs to happen during that pause, most people asked for further planning work and community processes, so that's included there. And many people also asked that we should have a formulation of DDPs before we start the work again. But actually, DDPs are not the only elements of the Master Plan Perspective 2025 document. We also have annual plans, layout plans, environmental impact assessments, and so on in the document. And so that's why we referred to the Master Plan document in its entirety and as a framework, as it's mentioned in the Master Plan itself, rather than just DDPs. And so the second question that comes with this part of the previous proposal is, how will the Residents' Assembly notify that the work can resume? And so this has been changed through, the outcome shall be approved through a ratified Residents' Assembly decision-making process before the above specified clearing, infrastructure laying, and permanent construction work resumes. So what was important is that the outcome of processes, which means that the processes can start without an approval of the RA, but the outcome of these processes have to be approved by the RA through its then ratified decision-making process. Yeah, it says through a ratified RAD process, which means that the process can change till then. If the process changes, it's still going to be valid. Yeah, before the actual implementation takes place. And this is a way that we can ensure that this way forward has been collectively agreed upon. And so what about the time frame for the pause? No? Because if we look at the survey, we had a question about the time frame. So among the feedback received, there was no clear picture that was really seeming to emerge in regards to the time frame. Like 26 residents suggested between 3 months and over a year. 24 residents suggested 3 months or less. And 22 said it should take as long as needed in order to complete any agreed process. And right now, if we look at what happens in the community, there seems to be momentum in moving forward with the dream weaving exercise, and then the formulation of DDP with the Vastu Shilpa Foundation. That seemed to be an overall feeling in the room when the dream weaving team presented in Unity Pavilion a few days ago. And all this, according to the experts involved, could take about a year, like 2-3 months for the dream weaving and roughly a year for the DDP. But it's still to be seen, and we thought that putting a time frame here would be very limiting. But the intention is very clearly that the development work should resume as soon as possible, while also taking as long as necessary, for it to be based on true collaboration, common agreement, and a renewed sense of unity that we're together in this. And at any point of time in the coming month, that's just a reminder, once this RAD process is over, residents can always initiate a new decision-making process to review where we're at with the pause, if it has been approved, and to define further timeframes if we feel that we need a time frame or so. So that are more or less all the reasons why so far there hasn't been any time frame specified in the RAD proposal. And yeah, I think that's it.
And I'll just mention what feedback remains and how it will be addressed. So the feedback that was not directly related to reviewing the RAD proposal, such as requests for further information related to the planning, requests for changes in the ATDC and working committee teams, and the ways in which these teams work, the accountability processes for actions taken, as well as the suggestions for strengthening our community processes. And it is to be taken up by the RAS and relevant working groups and any concerned individuals. So that could be any of you who feel that they can address and answer these, but we just want to address that all of the questions that came up are very relevant, and they are being addressed, or they're being redirected to the people who can answer them. And we appreciate the feedback that was given, so that all of those of you who took the time to be engaged in this process and to give feedback, even if there were questions that we couldn't address in rewriting the RAD proposal, they are being considered and they will be answered by relevant groups. And then I'd like to repeat the RAD proposal again, and we'll have it in a number of languages to make sure that everyone feels that they fully understand what we're suggesting. So the revised RAD proposal reads as follows: to pause all clearing, infrastructure laying, and permanent construction work on the right-of-ways of Crown, Radials, and Outer Ring in order to enable the community to define a way forward for Auroville's development, following a collective processes, the Master Plan Perspective 2025 framework, and other relevant regulations. The outcome shall be approved through a ratified Residents' Assembly decision-making process before the above specified clearing, infrastructure laying, and permanent construction work resumes.
Hi, I'll read the reformulated proposal in Tamil. ஆரோவில்லில் குடியிருப்பாளர்கள் ஆரோவில்லின் வளர்ச்சியை பின்வரும் செயல்கள் மூலம் சாத்தியமாக்க, அதாவது சமுதாய கூட்டு கலந்த முறைமைகள், மாஸ்டர் பிளான் கண்ணோட்டம் 2025, பிற தொடர்புடைய விதிமுறைகள், இதெல்லாம் வச்சு கிரவுன், ரேடியல், வெளிப்புற ரிங் வீதி மற்றும் அதன் அருகே வரவிருக்கும் உள்கட்டமைப்பு வேலைகள் தற்காலிகமாக நிறுத்தி வைக்கப்படுவது அவசியமாகும். மேற்கூறிய தற்காலிக நிறுத்தம் தொடங்குவதற்கு ஆரோவில்லின் அவைக்குழு ஒன்றிணைந்து முடிவெடுப்பதன் மூலமே அங்கீகரிக்கப்படும்.